I want to take a moment. This will be the first time we go into Google Analytics, and I'll show you how you access the dashboard here. For our purposes, we're going to be using a friend of mine. This is not a client, and if it were, there would be several SEO recommendations I would make. But I want to show you my friend who owns a photography business, has set up analytics for his primary business, which is sells high-end photos, and a separate business he has called Pop-Up Studio, which does kind of this premium photo booth. Where we are now is the main login area for Google Analytics, but what I want to focus on is dimensions and metrics, so we can begin to understand what these mean. So as we get through this, you'll see at the top this section that says primary dimension. These are all dimensions: source, medium, keyword, and there are additional dimensions that you can add as well. Dimensions usually go alongside metrics, with dimensions being in the left column and metrics being in the columns to the right. Each of these are metrics that we'll talk about: visits, new visits, percent new visits, bounce rate, pages per visit, average visit duration. These are all questions that are answered with numbers, as you can see. These are questions. This is a question that is answered with words. Again, it's a rule of thumb, but I do think it helps to explain things. As you're looking at the interface right now, you'll see how Google Analytics displays the information. We'll begin to use Dave's website throughout, but it may not work exactly for your business. What I like about it is it has some complexity to it, but not so much that I think you'll be overwhelmed. For other cases, we will use examples that I've brought with me. Again, dimensions and metrics. Dimensions are questions that are answered with words. Metrics are questions that are answered with numbers. What's a conversion? Well, let's go to Google's definition of a conversion. A conversion is a customer action that has value to your website, that has value to your business, such as a purchase, downloading an app, visiting a website, filling out a contact form, or signing a contract. Online and offline actions are called conversions because a customer's click translated or converted to business. This means that when you get done with everything else, where the traffic came from, how long they were on your site, what you really want to know is, what did I get from all this, all this marketing effort that I put forth? We want to measure how effective it was. Google recommends that you talk about macro conversions and micro conversions, or that you focus on macro conversions and micro conversions. Macro conversions are really plain and simple. You can easily determine a return on investment from macro conversions. These are things like an online purchase or a contact form submission, where we can put a dollar value to how valuable is a contact form submission to me. Well, in general, each one I get is worth a dollar value based on historical data from your sales team. An online purchase is even more transparent. We can look at how many products were sold and how much we spent to sell those products. Micro conversions are a little bit different. They're leading indicators of success. They're positive. We want to continue to track them, but it's harder to attach an ROI to them. Leading indicators of success include, having somebody sign up for a company newsletter, download a white paper, or take some sort of other action that we want them to take. It's harder to assign a dollar value to those, but micro conversions are important to the overall success of a campaign. Finally, I want to talk about attribution. Attribution is a way of assigning credit for a conversion. For instance, what action led to a visitor filling out a contact form? In this demonstration I have here, you can see that the first time that the person went to the site was from an organic visit. He then returned later with a direct visit, which means he typed the URL into his browser. And then later he found it again with a display ad and made a sale. How much credit should each of these channels receive for that sale? Well, it depends. There's these different forms of attribution that Google talks about. I ask the question, how much credit should the organic visit receive if it was the first one that led to this sale? Well, if we're talking about last click attribution, 0%. It gets none of it. The display ad gets 100% of the credit. Whoever the team was that was running the display ad, this decision maker has decided they get all the credit. However, if the organization said, we're going to give first click attribution, we're going to give credit to the first thing that led to this user, 100% of the credit would go to the organic visit. This is a little bit more of a fair way of doing things, a linear attribution. We give credit to each step of the process. The customer had a positive enough experience from each of these where eventually it led to a sale. In linear attribution, the organic visit would receive 33% of the credit. Data segmentation is very important, and we'll go over this a lot in this presentation. What it allows us to do is focus on a small set of data rather than focusing on all of it at once. So you could easily imagine how this would be beneficial. If I want to know about how successful an email marketing campaign was, it doesn't benefit me to just look at the conversion data plain and simple. It would help me to look at how much traffic came from email marketing and how often those visitors turned into sales. We'll go over in greater detail later in this presentation how segmentation works, but I did want you to understand how marketers and business leaders use this. Here are some examples of common areas of segmentation. You could geographically segmentate. So if I want to know the users in North America, let's say the United States and Canada, I can just segment to focus on those and get rid of all the data from the other countries in the world. Maybe I want to know about just new visitors to my site. I don't care about the returning visitors. I frankly think that they should be there. But how are people who are new to the site coming? I'm not saying that's your business model, but I'm saying that could be a decision you make. Finally, you just want to evaluate your different marketing channels. You want to see how paid search is doing, how your SEO team is doing, how your social media marketing team is doing. We can segment each of those into different channels. And finally, we want to put some sort of a time on this. Are we evaluating on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, etc.? A lot of times year-over-year data is applied. And finally, key performance indicators, or KPIs. These are metrics that are going to be used to evaluate the success or failure of a marketing campaign. It's very important that we establish KPIs at the outset of a campaign. Important decision makers should be part of that process. As a marketer, I'd like to be part of that process so I can evaluate how realistic the goals are. Some very common KPIs for internet marketers are an increase in conversion rate, a decrease in the cost per conversion, and some form of measuring your web audience retention.